excellence from the center of excellence. This is Lagos Talks 91.3.
Welcome to Conversations with Faith. My name is Faith, and you're listening to the Saturday Breakfast Show. So I did mention that I was going to have a guest. Just wanted to make sure that I could confirm before anything else. Okay, so I have in the studios, I'm going to introduce him to you, Kingsley Chiedu Moghalu. I hope I got the pronunciation of the name right. It's probably going to correct me if I don't. He's a political economist, lawyer, and former United Nations official, and also a professor of practice in international business and public policy at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. He's also a founder of Shagado Strategies and LLC, an emerging market risk strategy and macroeconomic advisory firm, and also a senior advisor of the Official Monetary and Financial Institutions Forum. He's also a contributory editor of the Central Banking Journal. But one thing that you also need to remember him for definitely is that he served as deputy governor of the CBN, that's the Central Bank of Nigeria, from 2009 to 2014. Okay, and he did lead, the implementation of some reforms in the banking sector. Okay, after a combination of the global financial crisis. I can go on and on, but yeah. But I have him in the studios here, and we're going to be talking about generally, of course, economic matters, financial matters, and empowerment matters, all of that. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Morning. Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are a few parts of the content that I actually want to touch this morning. I want to talk about the budget, the 2017 budget, and of course the 2018 budget as well. I want to talk about those two, but I also want to talk about the CBN policy. Knowing that you used to work at the CBN, you were deputy governor, and you were part of some reforms. I want to talk about the forex policy, the intervention policy that they've been doing. In the news this morning, let's actually start with that. In the news this morning, I saw the story about the CBN boosting retail secondary market intervention sales with $262.5 million. Okay, now if there's anything that CBN has been doing, because I remember early last year, I had Isaac Okura in the studios, and he was talking about them injecting, when I think that was when the first had this injection into the forex market, and I asked him how sustainable it was and how he thinks it was going to help the forex market, and he said it was going to help largely, and that they were going to sustain it as much as possible and as long as possible, that they have enough forex reserves for that. I mean, right now our forex reserves is over 40 billion US dollars, so it does seem like something that they can carry on doing. There are several economists that have faulted it and said that it's not sustainable, but this story is saying that they have just pumped in this money again, and it's supposed to be for let me get the story very properly. He said it's for the secondary market intervention sales. Okay, and they say that it was in favor of the agricultural, airlines, petroleum products, and raw materials and machinery sectors as well. It's supposed to help in boosting production and trade and sustain liquidity in the markets. So right now the Naira is exchanging at 359 to a US dollar. At the parallel markets, 361 Naira to a US dollar. So do you see this as working so far?
The
injections. Yes.
Yes. Now, of course, the injections are deemed necessary by the economic situation we have in Nigeria, which is that there is some illiquidity in the forex market. There's not enough forex coming into Nigeria through foreign investments and other sources, so that the market itself can determine the price of the dollar, the price of the Naira in relation to the dollar. Now, so of course the central bank sees itself as having the responsibility to ensure stability in the forex market, and therefore they do these interventions. Now, let me first of all be very clear. The interventions that the central bank does, most central banks intervene in the forex market occasionally. But in Nigeria, it's become a pattern.
It's a norm.
Yeah, it's become the norm now. And in fact, for many years actually, that we've been intervening.
Was this done when you were deputy governor?
Nowhere near this scale. It was
but
done,
there was some
but there were
intervention
some
done as
interventions,
well.
Yes. Yeah, but not at this scale, not at this frequency, not at this. Yeah, not. Yeah. So the reason, of course, why the scale and frequency has become necessary is because of the recession, which almost wiped out this country economically. And of course, there are people who would argue that a major part of the reason we had the recession was also the forex policy of the central bank in the first place, when it chose to maintain a fixed exchange rate for quite a long time, which was against market fundamentals. And this of course led to manufacturers not being able to access forex, led to a lot of foreign exchange racketeering. And of course those manufacturers had to lay off workers and their productivity went down, and so the GDP crashed. So this is it. But my view is that the interventions are not a sustainable way to run an economy such as Nigeria's economy. The interventions are happening because there is not enough foreign investor confidence in Nigeria for dollars to be coming in at the scale they used to.
It should come in.
Yes, at the scale it used to. In 2014, there was about $20 billion of foreign investment.
What do you think is the difference between what was done then and what is being done now to promote or to, encourage that confidence in investors coming in?
Well,
because I mean, what the CBN saying recently that, oh no, we have FIDs, they're coming in now. We have portfolio coming in. I mean, it's all working out.
Yeah, it's beginning to trickle upwards. It's beginning to move upwards, but nowhere near what was happening when we were at the central bank. The policies we ran at the central bank at the time, I think many investors found the economic environment. They were confident in the economic environment. They were confident in the ability of the central bank under Governor Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, and I was one of the deputy governors in the bank at the time. They felt confidence in the economy. And there were some other measures on the fiscal side as well, which is the Ministry of Finance and the government and so on. Now, but there are just some fundamental problems that need to be addressed in the economic management of Nigeria. The first problem is that there is no real guiding overall economic philosophy or a framework.
How do you mean?
What I mean is this: every mature economy in the world makes a decision as to what exactly it is philosophically. Is it a capitalist economy? What is the role of the state and what is the role of the market? The balance between the two is what every economy must first of all agree on and make that the framework for the management of the economy. We haven't done that in Nigeria.
Have we ever done that?
Not really, not as far as I know, except in the 60s and in the early 70s, during what we call the commanding heights of the economy. The role of the government in the economy was very, very strong. And so they would have these development plans. So
it was almost socialist, sort of.
Well, you would call it a developmental state, what we call a developmental state, yeah. And I think we need to get back to that with the right type of balance between the state and the private sector. But that hasn't happened in many years.
What about the arguments, several people that government has no business doing business? There are people who are saying, privatize everything. Let's run a strictly capitalist economy. Yeah. Let's let the market determine price and everything.
These are the philosophical questions that I'm talking about. You come to the heart of the matter. Now, the government cannot be the market, and the government cannot replace the market. But the problem is that the government in Nigeria is trying to either be the market or replace the market under the guise of regulating the market. Because the government should certainly regulate the market. You can't just have a free market running amok.
Yes.
So now, but the government, even while allowing market forces to function, but the government must always have a guiding hand. They must sort of be in the background watching, because the responsibility for the administration of the state ultimately is with the government. It's not with private businessmen.
Yes.
So who are just looking for their own profit.
Make profit.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So it's that modulated regulatory approach. We haven't found that balance quite yet. And you find, because of this, the investor confidence in the Nigerian economy has gone down very significantly over the last 2-3 years.
Why is it going? Why did it go down more prominently then? If you're saying that we've never really had defined this policy or this philosophy for a long period of time, how is it more prominently significant now?
Yes, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. For example, under the government of President Jonathan, the economy looked as if it was buoyant. Let me
You
tell
said
you why.
looked as
Yes,
if. So it wasn't really buoyant, it just looked as if.
yeah, it looked as if. Why? One, because the oil price was high.
Okay.
That's number one. So now, because also the Jonathan government gave a lot of encouragement to the private sector. So they found the government under that regime sort of business friendly.
Okay.
But the point is this, that Jonathan, his government overdid it. So it wasn't a properly thought through approach. And so a lot of business and private business interests
took
advantage of it and began to influence policy. And
Okay.
that also is not right, because that is what we call the subordinate state, when the state becomes subordinate to the private sector. Yeah. So it's a very,
So
very
now this
careful
government
balance.
came in and it seemed like
it
they
swung the
pulled
other
back
way.
everything
Yeah.
and
They
they
swung the
back
other way. They
way.
swung the other way. So this is why we're having these problems we're having. There hasn't been, you see, you have to make, there are 4 types of capitalism. There is entrepreneurial capitalism. There is state capitalism, which is what China is practicing. There is welfare capitalism, which is what you see in a lot of European countries.
Yes.
And there is crony capitalism, which is what you see in Russia, and you see a lot of that in Nigeria, where cronies who are politically connected to people in power make a lot of huge money.
They're the beneficiaries.
Yeah, and then the economy is not inclusive, and there's a lot of poverty in this country. There's 60% poverty in this country. That's why.
Are you sure 60%? I thought it was more actually.
Well, it could be more in real terms, but
In real terms,
statistically,
36.
yeah. So that is the problem we have in Nigeria. We don't have an inclusive economy. We don't have a productive economy. Nigeria's economy still is affected inordinately by the price of oil.
Let's talk about the price of oil for
Yeah.
a minute, because there has been the conversation about oil. I mean, in the news, aside, we've had this Benue killings, sort of like overtaking that, but in the news cycle. But as at 2 weeks ago, the biggest stories were still the issue of oil prices
going up.
and whether subsidies were being paid or not,
Yeah.
and why can't we run our refineries? Why are we paying so much? And how come when oil prices go up in international markets,
Yeah.
as opposed to helping us here, it actually doesn't help us because we don't have our refineries. We have to
Exactly.
pay more locally,
Yeah, exactly.
but our foreign reserves go up. So while it is good news at one end,
It's also
it
bad
is
news in
it is
another
bad
end.
news at another
Let me-
end.
let-
So what should we do to them? Because they're saying that the government should, some economists are saying, let the market determine oil prices. The government should
The
stop
market-
trying to regulate it.
I
What do
believe,
you
I
think?
believe so. I believe so, because, well, we have a fundamental problem in Nigeria. We worship the gods of small things, and one of those gods is the price of oil. You're an oil-producing country. You export crude oil and,
Yes.
and import refined petroleum,
Refined petroleum
products. That is the first indication of governance failure and economic failure. For so many years, this has been the norm, because we cannot run functional refineries in this country.
Why do you think for so many years, for so many administrations, we have not been able to solve this problem?
Because the political leadership that Nigeria has produced for a long time is not competent enough to administer those
So
institutions.
is it a political will or competence?
Both. And so a lot of corruption has gone into the oil industry, including the whole question of refineries. You hear from time to time that bringing out so billion naira for turnaround.
Yeah, they want to have a maintenance. I think about 5 billion is put aside for that.
Yeah,
and
I'm not
the
holding
question,
my breath.
The question though is, because I mean, when the Minister of State for Petroleum, he came up to talk about, we're going to concession refineries.
Yes.
We had Nigerians go up in arms and say, you cannot concession, we don't want that.
Yeah.
But that was also his own thing of saying,
Yeah.
as governments, we're not running this thing properly. So
Precisely.
let's give it to people who
Precisely.
can run
Let
it.
me explain
How
something.
come there's that discordant tune between the
Discordant tune.
government and the people that they can't understand that this is actually for their good?
Exactly. First of all, he said, I think, that they were going to concession, but that
Yes.
never happened. So you must, of course, ask the question of whether the political authorities above him,
Also wanted it.
also
Well,
wanted it.
because I know
But-
that there was protests from the Niger Delta area. Don't concession our refineries.
Exactly. There is Nigeria's. This is one of the reasons. And by the way, I must say that I'm not abroad. I'm back in Nigeria as president of the Institute for Governance and Economic Transformation.
What was your lecturing job? Okay,
Yes, no, that was there, but I've left it and I've come back home.
Okay.
And the reason I've come back home is to engage myself with the people of Nigeria through educating. My institute will educate people on basic economics, basic governance issues, to help Nigerian citizens to hold their governments accountable, which is not happening at all. Now, it is because of this, the inadequacy of this kind of education on economics, that a lot of people feel that it is bad, quote unquote, to privatize some of these assets. We know there have been problems with privatization in Nigeria. Sometimes state assets are sold to cronies, and those state assets end up also not working. We're actually seeing it in power now. But the problem is that we don't have a capable state. For the state to run things, the state must be capable. The Nigerian state is not capable. That much is clear. Why? Because of the incompetence of our political leadership. They politicize everything. Decision. They are not interested in the efficient functioning of markets. They're more interested in giving their cronies advantage, and that leads to gridlock in the system. So, for example, private refineries are now coming up. You have the Dangote refinery coming up. Hopefully, everybody's hoping it will come up.
Here's
it's as if the Nigerian state is hoping that.
No. They are actually hoping, because the Minister of State actually said, "Oh, when the Dangote refinery," I'm like, "Oh,
exactly.
Why are you placing your hope on a private person's
initiative?"
But then
that
the
just
issue
tells you that
been,
the state governance has failed, and they're just sort of kneeling down and praying, one, that the oil price will go up, and two, that Dangote's refinery will come up.
Well, even if its refinery does come up in 2019, like he's saying, like it's posturing, what is the guarantee that it will be sold at the price that we want? Because here's the thing, it's in an exchange-free zone.
Yes.
So wouldn't it also be sold at international market prices?
Well, first of all, let's be clear.
I want to understand that.
Yes. Now, let's be clear. The price of petrol should be determined by market forces. This happened with telecoms. Immediately, the thing was left to the private sector. At first, the prices were high.
Then it crashed.
But it crashed because of competition. So if the downstream petroleum sector is opened up by the government to the private sector completely, and stop trying to regulate it for cheap political popularity, because they want to pretend that fuel is being sold at a lower price, but of course it's been increased to 145 and may increase again.
And there's subsidies being paid. Let me ask you that.
And exactly. Wasteful subsidies are being paid for the importation of petrol, because the refining price goes up when the oil price goes up.
Yes.
And so importing it becomes more expensive.
Absolutely.
And because the government wants to maintain the illusion to its citizens that it is working, it now spends a lot of money subsidizing the importation of petrol. Jonathan's government
the argument
and this government is doing it.
They're saying, "Oh, it's NNPC subsidizing, not us."
Who owns
Who
NNPC?
runs the NNPC? Okay.
It's part of the government. That is not an argument that I would accept at all. So there's just a fundamental problem that if you want to subsidize anything, as a general economic strategy rule, subsidize production. Do not subsidize consumption. We are subsidizing the consumption of petrol, and because of that, inefficiencies arise, and then the product becomes unavailable, and then people sleep at petrol stations. Isn't it better you just deregulate this whole thing?
And
let fuel be available everywhere at whatever price, and the market will determine the price eventually. You will see it coming down as different people get involved in the business, and refineries come up, modular refineries, and so on. This is a process.
The term of the modular refineries has been bandied around for so much, but we've not seen anything come out of it just yet. But
because it takes time to set these things up.
Let me ask you about where the CBN comes in for this whole thing before we get into the budget and everything.
Yeah.
I do know that the CBN, there was the conversation, the Minister of State for Petroleum was saying that when they had the meetings with the PPRA and of course IPMAN and DAPMAN and all of them, there was that communication thing. We're going to work with the CBN, so maybe they can give forex
preferential forex
to these people at lower price. How sustainable is that?
That is an absolute non-starter. One of the reasons why the Nigerian economy has crashed and is in a very, very traumatized condition is this question of hidden forex subsidies. As I speak to you, there are still multiple forex rates in the central bank. No serious economy functions like this. And the reason is because of politics. Some people are being subsidized. Some activities are being subsidized. And that means that a lot of value is being lost in the economy through these subsidies. So the question of the CBN giving preferential forex to petrol, it's a non-starter. It's not going to work. If subsidizing the whole thing is not going to work. saying that the marketers should now import and sell at their own rate,
rates,
while NNPC stations sell at a subsidized rate. First of all, how many NNPC stations exist in Nigeria? And you will find that, of course, there's a massive traffic gridlock wherever there's an NNPC station, because people want to get at a lower price. So you're just creating a massive distortion in the economy. There is no option. Bite the bullet. Deregulate the
How do you communicate
downstream.
this to Nigerians?
Well, it's to make it clear to them that it's in their own interest, and to use the example of telecommunications. I think that's an example they can relate to, because
every time we use telecommunications, the people point out power as well. So it's almost like, well, that worked. This one didn't work. So how do we know this will work?
That's true. But you see, the two are different. The power is a much more complicated industry. And from experience now, we have seen that a lot of the privatizations were given to people who did not have the technical competence to run cronies. Exactly. So again, in the power sector, you find that my own approach to power is that the federal government should do the following. Industrial areas like Lagos, Kano, Onitsha, Nnewi, Aba, for example, gas and hydropower should go to these areas, and the rest of Nigeria's economy should go into renewable energy with solar panels and other forms of energy. But this takes, again, thinking. Nigerian politicians don't like to sit down and think seriously. They just want to be moving around, pretending that they're in a state of motion, but there is no real movement.
So there's a lot of activity, but really nothing is happening.
Yes, there's a lot of activity, but nothing is really happening. And the only way this can change is if Nigerian citizens rise up, go and get their voters' cards, and vote out the current political class and install technocratically competent.
But when you say current political class, that is wide,
because
the current political class is also what is in the two prominent parties that are available.
That's what I'm saying.
They are all the current
That I refer to them. That's what I'm referring to.
So how, if we look at the politics of Nigeria,
there's no difference between
both of them. Yeah. If we look at the politics of Nigeria, how feasible is it that we can be able to take out both of these ones?
Let me tell you how that is very, very feasible. It takes political education. It takes political mobilization. There are lots of young people in Nigeria who want a very different future and who think very differently from the way these politicians are thinking. If they organize themselves, get their voters' cards and go to the polling booth and say, look, we're going to look at the candidates in the 2019 elections, and we're going to see who are the people who seem to have the right types of economic ideas or the vision to lead Nigeria into the 21st century, and those are the people that we're going to vote for. That it can happen because they have the numbers. The question is, can they organize themselves? Can they get beyond the apathy?
That is
get off their backside, complaining into the cyberspace, and go and actually vote. If you're not, as I said it, there's a popular saying, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
That is the word. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Because this one about young people, I see a lot of not too young to run, not too young to run. And then there are people, of course, who will come to tell you, oh, you know what? Elections are not won on social media. And then there's also the new movements, which hopefully I'm able to get Madam Obi to talk about at some point, the issue of red card movement to the two political parties. Sure. All this sounds very well and good, very nice when you say it, but the truth of the matter is, just to veer a little into the politics of it, is that in Nigeria, we do know that a lot of the times, middle class, they don't go out to vote as much as they tout on social media, number one. And number two, a lot of people, it's about me, The average Nigerian is hungry. So you give the person, a derica of rice, they're ready to vote for whoever.
That's what's called stomach infrastructure.
A stomach infrastructure.
Which, as I have said, the only guarantee it gives you, stomach infrastructure, the only guarantee you get from it is a trip to the toilet. Now, the point is this. Yes, the average Nigerian is poor, but we need to be able to educate our citizens to understand that the poverty, it should become an incentive for them to act differently.
So it should not be, let me get fed now. It should be, I want to get fed for a long time.
For a long time. And therefore, I'm going to try to put people in power who can work out a system that keeps us well fed, gives our kids jobs, for the long term. That's what we should be thinking about. But instead, a lot of Nigerian citizens are acting as if they are, part of the Stockholm syndrome. They've fallen in love with their captors, and that is just
I think that's the truth, actually.
Yeah, but that must change. If it doesn't change, then our citizens should simply stop complaining, because they are responsible for their own poverty. Period.
We're going,
We're in a democracy.
we're going to talk about educating,
Yeah.
the people a lot more
Sure.
as we go on the show. But let me talk about, because I mean, from the oil sector,
Yeah.
conversation that we had, where you said that it's majorly politics, where you're trying to regulate this thing. I mean, the president keeps saying, I want it to remain at 145 naira per liter.
Why must it?
145 naira per liter.
In reality,
and
that's not
he's
so.
saying it's because of the welfare of the people. And a lot of the times, you're looking at it at the economic policy of this administration, which they hinge on, it's about the welfare of the people. How do you think they've fared so far?
Very poorly. Let me explain. What is the welfare of the people? You measure the welfare of the people in the following ways. Do they have good health care? Do they have good education systems? What is the average income? What is the income of the average household in Nigeria? How many people have jobs? These are the indicators of welfare, which is a more holistic form of economic development. Welfare is not, instead of addressing these fundamental issues, look at education. It's just 7% of the 2018 budget. And you say,
You're addressing welfare.
Yeah, so it's about your actions. It's not about platitudes. It's not about just words, to keep people sort of, how do you, in a certain state of suspended animation, or they continue to hope and believe, but nothing is actually happening. Now, the point is that giving people all these welfare packages is not the solution. You don't give a man fish. You
teach him
teach
how to fish.
a man how to fish. That is what a government should be doing. We are not a welfare state. We cannot be. Even the welfare states like Saudi Arabia that have stupendous amounts of money from oil, they are moving away from it because it's not sustainable. In Europe, it's the same thing. Maintaining a welfare state takes a lot of money. We don't even have a functional taxation system in this country. So where does the government get the money to create a really functional welfare state? So you have a pretense at welfare. You're giving people 5,000.
I wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
This issue of, for this administration, they have three phases. They have the Empower, they have the conditional cash transfer, and then they have the school feeding program. A lot of the times, they tout, how many states now? I mean, I can see in the news, 16 states participating in federal government's conditional cash transfer program. And then you talk about the Empower as well, and they say, Empower is supposed to be where they recruit graduates, in different sectors, whether it is farming. So you have agriculture, you have, teaching, and then of course you have medicine and all. So they recruit them, medical sectors, they recruit them, and they pay them money to do jobs, like that. So you were saying these welfare situations, they're
not working, and they're not addressing the problem at its foundation. Let me give you a different vision of Nigeria, which I have, and that is this. First of all, when you talk about conditional cash transfers, they did it in Brazil. But it was very well managed and actually achieved certain results. That extremely poor families were given some financial support provided they met certain conditions. And that is that their children would go to school so that they would have an educated workforce. Do you see the point? Now, I don't know that this is being done in Nigeria, but they borrowed the term conditional cash transfer. Let's see whether the result will be the same as in Brazil.
I do know is that if you're saying that Brazil hinged that on their own, I don't know if that is part of the condition here, because
that's what I'm trying to say. But you're using, there is no conditions that I know that are clearly spelled out, but you're using the term conditional cash transfer.
It
sounds good, but you're not actually doing it. Now, so if you were doing it, then that's a different discussion, because this was one of the ways in which extreme poverty was very significantly brought down in Brazil. Now, the point is this: there's a different way. The government budgets about 500 billion naira every year for all these programs. If you put that 500 billion naira to establish a venture capital fund, side by side with the private sector. Let's say the government puts up 500 billion, the private sector puts up 500 billion, assuming that they have enough confidence in the Nigerian economy to bring in that amount of capital. Now, you have a 1 trillion naira fund, right? The venture capital fund will invest in new business ventures that will actually create wealth and create new jobs. Now, there's a lot of interest in venture capital in this country because people know that Nigerians are very innovative. They know that young Nigerians are dynamic and vibrant. So, for example, you find small companies like Farm Crowdy or Andela, receiving a lot of money from venture capital firms outside the country and inside the country. But if the government were to institutionalize this venture capital idea, it will stimulate this economy massively in a much more efficient and market-oriented way than these wasteful uses of government
conditional
resources.
cash transfer.
Yes.
Somebody was asking, on social media, that what exactly is the idea for the school feeding program, because you talk about children being fed. Is it to keep them in schools? Because from stories that have come out, they eat and then they go out. They don't stay in school.
Exactly.
So what is the end goal of this school feeding program?
Yes.
And then what is the end goal of the Empower? People have come out to talk about it. I've been looking forward to getting interviews. I've asked to interview people who have benefited from the conditional cash transfer and the Empower, so that I can talk to them personally. I haven't been able to get that, just yet. Hopefully I'll be able to do it before. I'll be able to get that, before the end of the year, so that at least we know what the experience is.
Yes,
with those people.
We need to evaluate these programs.
Evaluate and see how much progress it has
and they
made.
should be evaluated independently.
Which is why I want to do
it's not
it.
the government singing its own
what?
song.
I want to see these people myself.
Absolutely.
And talk to them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the budget. You said
yes.
in 2018, 8% or
7%
for education. Very, very dismal proportion. Let's talk about 2017 budget first.
Yeah.
There are people, lawmakers called it a dismal performance.
Yes.
That's, not up to 40%.
Yes.
But then you had the president say that he was satisfied with the implementation of the 2017 budget. Do you think the 2017 budgets actually met up to expectation where implementation was concerned?
Of course, it was a colossal failure in terms of performance. Just about 30% performance. Where in the world is that a pass mark? Except maybe in Nigeria and except maybe for some people. But the fact of the matter is that budget performance in Nigeria has been weak for many, many years. And in the last 2 or 3 years, it's gotten even worse. That's the problem. Remember that a lot of the capital projects for the 2017 budget have had to be rolled over.
Yes, rolled over to
into the 2018 budget.
Yes.
What other indication of failure do you have other than that the year has gone and most of what was said?
Well, some people
will
will
be done?
ascribe that to politics and say,
but that's part of the failure.
It is maybe the legislator not, approving them and processes.
You see,
and
that is why when I talk about the political class, it's a wide phrase. I'm not just talking about the executive. The legislators also are part of that political class. So, for example, you have legislators, when the federal government brings a budget, the legislators begin to add their own items into the budget. This, in my view, is unconstitutional. Making a budget is the function of the executive. It is not the function of the legislature, which is to approve it and to appropriate the money.
Yes.
But this is Nigeria. A lot of things, work on their head, upside down, and Nigerian citizens, very sad, and Nigerian citizens, because they're not very politically educated about these issues, because they're still very hungry, they're focused on the basics, and they're not actually looking at what do we do about how horribly we are governed in this country. So the question is that I think it's now for the educated citizenry to be able to organize and take action. First, by educating uneducated citizens, which is part of what my institute is trying to do.
We overlook that, and somebody is packaged in a certain way.
Exactly.
Because if you don't check what the person has done before, you don't know what the person is capable of doing now.
But you're taking, maybe they're distributing 2,000 naira, and you take it and go and vote for them. 4 years later, they come back with another 2,000 naira. Meanwhile, your son still doesn't have a job. Your daughter still doesn't have a job.
Can't go to school.
Can't go to school. So these are fundamental things, and I think we need to begin to shift the narrative towards these fundamentals. Not people coming with razzmatazz or coming with smoke and mirrors.
Look at the 2018 budget.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to do?
A
lot of the, like you said, infrastructure projects have been moved to 2018 budgets.
Exactly.
What do you think about the 2018 budget in itself?
I think that the 2018 budget itself, the assumptions are very hopeful. and I don't think they're
Believe in
likely.
it.
Yeah, I don't think they're likely to be met. So it's just a very very basic problem. I find that the allocations, the budgetary allocations to health and education, are extremely weak. And even if you made enough budgetary allocations to them,
Yes.
how will those allocations be implemented and executed? Is that just a pyramid of budget padding for corrupt officials, or will that money actually be spent on quality education or quality healthcare? So there's several problems in Nigeria, but the point is this: the political leadership of Nigeria, in my view, needs to change. Nigeria needs to be led by a technocrat with vision, a technocrat with competence. The problems we have in this country require technocratic knowledge, experience, and track record to solve them. Politicians are not equipped. They're very good at winning elections, but they're not good at solving our practical problems.
Which is exactly what I want to point out. Winning elections in this country, the political climate is a very, very peculiar one.
Yes.
First, you can't just decide that, oh, this is my local government area, I want to run for, chairmanship or something.
Yes.
You have to go. It's a sort of an apprenticeship sort of nature.
System.
So you go join a political party and you start from the lowest cadre. By the time you get to that point where you're ready to contest, you already in the system, you're corrupted by the system.
Exactly.
You are beholden to people.
That's right.
At the end of the day, you have people you have to pay back.
So
by the time you win the elections,
exactly.
So how is it possible to get technocrats in with the sort of system that we have?
Now listen, there are new parties
and get them to win elections.
There are new parties coming up now in Nigeria. It's no longer just the PDP or the APC. Now they're new, yes, so that means they may not yet be very strong. But I think that if Nigeria's citizens, our citizens, if we decide to begin to patronize some of these new parties, to give them a second look and to maybe support them, I think that they are not part of the system that has already been corrupted, and therefore they're more likely, if supported by the citizens who have the numbers to change things. So we're more likely to get better governance from some of these new associations that are coming up. So, and I think it's a sign of hope that people have decided to wake up. Nigeria is woke.
Is it a sign of hope, really? Because I'll point this out.
Yeah.
Usually we have a lot of political parties. A year to the elections, INEC just registered 21 other parties.
That's true.
We had 46, so now we have 67.
Yes.
Now, 46 that we had means that we had 46 in 2015.
That's true.
All of these parties are silent.
Yes.
They are quiet.
Yes.
And then once it's a year to the elections, you see them come up. What actually happens is that by the time you get to 2019, by January 2019 or maybe November 2018, most of these parties start coming together and start endorsing one of the top political parties. So you see, I'm endorsing the PDP, I'm endorsing the APC.
Some of them are pocket.
At the end of the day, after the elections, they're quiet. COA had a showing in 2015 that made people say, maybe we can give them a chance in 20. Let's see what they do. You couldn't win now, but COA was silent all through.
I see.
So now, even though they seem to be the beacon of hope, they were quiet.
Okay.
And then you show up in 2018.
Yeah.
Especially because of our political climate.
Yes.
Is it something that political parties have not learned yet, that you can't show up in 2018 and want to make an impact?
I believe that all these new parties, COA is not new. It's been there. COA, the YPP, the Young Progressive Party,
APGA, all of those parties.
Well, APGA is old.
No, it's very old actually.
So, and the ANRP, the Abundant Nigeria Renewal Party, and several of these new parties. I think we're seeing a new spirit where they're much more active. And I think from now on are likely to remain much more active than has been the case in the past. There's something new that is happening in 2018. That is why you have this, hashtag red card movement.
Yes.
That is why you have the national intervention movement that some people are putting together.
Yes.
Because there is now a rising swell of dissatisfaction. It's like we've come to the rock bottom and there is no way else to go but up. So that is a sign of hope. Let's hope and let's see whether the organizers of these movements and these new political parties will sustain the momentum, build it, crystallize on it to form a third or fourth force in Nigerian politics. I predict that is going to happen starting in 2019. That's
I hope
my
so.
take.
I hope so. I hope they can maintain. But let's talk about educating people.
Yeah.
Right. Your institute, that's
Yes.
what you do.
That's right.
Like you're just in Lagos, because most of the people that
We're based in Abuja.
We're based in Abuja. They are like averages for the 36 states.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, no, but you see, it doesn't matter where you're based. It's about the tools that you use. That's what determines the people you reach. For example, even though we're based in Abuja, we're going to be using a lot of radio across the whole country to talk to people about, why it's important to get your PVC and actually to vote, why your destiny is in your own hands. It doesn't matter what you complain about, how difficult it is, the politicians, you vote for them, they steal your votes. You see, the more you complain and stay out, the more you're giving a space to those crooked elements.
But how do you convince the woman who doesn't know where food is coming from for her kids, and
Yes.
who doesn't even care who is the president or the state governor, as long as she can get food to feed her kids
I understand.
in one remote village?
Yeah.
You know what, you need to do this, you need to get PVC and vote for this person, when another person is just going to give her maybe rice and chicken, and she just feels, I can feed my kids now, and that's it. How do you convince her to change her mind?
Yeah, well, there's a
Considering her education.
Yeah, it's
status
exactly.
as well.
It is to break it down for them and say, look, stop selling your destiny for a mess of porridge. That's just what it boils down to. And the fact that you're not educated is not an excuse, because you are perpetuating your poverty by taking this attitude. Try to protest with your vote, and in an organized manner, try to find or support people who are likely to bring better policies. In the interim, some people would say, well, take the money and vote for whoever you think is the real person.
Does that always work?
But we don't think that really doesn't work, because there are sophisticated ways of coercing people who take money to ensure they voted accordingly. I mean, some people have this experience.
Yes.
So the more important thing is to educate people. But it's not going to happen overnight. Let's not kid ourselves. It's not like in 2019 we're going to rise up and everybody will become wonderfully educated. Nobody will take stomach infrastructure. But I'm now beginning to make the point that stomach infrastructure is not the solution. The solution
it hasn't worked.
The solution is mental infrastructure. Creating the system that builds for sustainability. That's what I'm into, and that's why I left the comfort of my endeavors to come back to Nigeria to say, look, this is my country. It doesn't mean anything to me if I'm privately successful, whereas anytime I come home, I'm surrounded by a sea of poverty and people are asking you for handouts, when what they really need is a hand up. So we need to build the systems, and the only way you can build the systems is to put the right people in the position to build the systems.
And the only way you can do it is educate people.
And the only people you can do that is to educate them to be able to do that, and for those people to actually do it. It's a process. Vote, vote, vote. The more people can register to come in to vote in 2019, and especially the more young people can do this, the better it's going to be for Nigeria.
Some people have also, of course, said that the middle class, they are sort of, would I say, they live in a bubble.
Yes.
They really don't relate with what is going on with the regular Nigerian.
Absolutely.
And they're not even the elite or the political class. It's just the middle class.
The middle class. Exactly.
We're a little comfortable. So,
okay. Yeah.
So that's fine.
Yeah.
What is their contribution to this? Because somebody was saying that, I had somebody here last week who was saying that the restructuring conversation has to start with the middle class. You can't leave it to people from the grassroots. That's why people like IPOB cannot push a restructuring conversation.
That's right.
Because of the kind of place they're coming from.
Yeah.
But is the middle class ready to take on that gauntlet? Are they even interested?
Yes, no, that's true.
That?
You have a problem, and that is a very, very valid problem. This political education is not just for the poor. It's really for the whole of the Nigerian citizenry, including the middle class. For them, you're not educating them so much about the basics as about why it's important for them to take up their own responsibility and swell the numbers of the middle class by voting in the right types of people. What is transformation? The leader that Nigeria needs is the leader that understands how to manage the economy and will be able to move millions of Nigerians from poverty into the middle class. This is what was done in China over a period of 30 years.
Yes.
About 500 million people were officially moved from poverty into the middle class, measurably. In Rwanda, this is also happening. about 1 to 2 million people have moved from poverty into the middle class. So, but it requires some intellectual heavy lifting to be able to do this. It requires an organizational capability. It requires what we call a world view of the future. And Nigeria's politicians have not shown any inclination that they understand, let alone have the will, to acquire a world view of transformation. When you look at what is the distance between Nigeria and Malaysia, the distance between our societies, where we are relative to Malaysia, relative to Brazil, relative to some of the Asian countries, and how do we close that gap? And what do we do to close that gap? That's the type of leader Nigeria needs. Somebody who thinks in this way, or people who think in this way, because it's not one person's job alone.
Exactly.
It's really the job of the whole society and the whole of the government. So, but there is always a paramount helmsman or helmswoman who is maybe like the president or the governor in a state. So when we say this, exactly, there must be an ultimate leader who will drive the agenda of transformation. So. And that's what we should be looking for in 2019.
Yeah, there are people who get flumokes who say that, you know what, most of these our leaders, they travel abroad, they see the developments, they see.
But they're not interested in bringing it back
home. How come
home?
They're not interested? I mean, I don't get that as well.
It's a very
How
weird
come
psychology.
They're very comfortable with having those kind of development abroad, but back home it makes no sense to translate that.
And that's why, although it's no excuse, you know the current controversy where the U.S. president is alleged to have used shithole countries. And that's how people perceive our leaders, because they travel abroad, they hobnob with world leaders, they're happy to be seen in photographs with them, but they don't come back to their own country and replicate what they have seen. No, for them, it's just very personal. To them. So they're interested in just their own enrichment, their own exercise of power, crony, supporting and helping their cronies, but they don't transform their own societies. And so that's what gives rise to these insults from foreign leaders.
So do we have a right to protest? To protest and get upset?
We must still protest and get upset, because it's just not right to use racist or derogatory language.
Comments.
But we need to also take a look at ourselves and say, look, aren't we being insulted because we're insulting ourselves in the first place?
Because of time, well, of course, we can't take a lot of phone calls, but you can join the conversation. I know that I should have probably opened our phone lines right now, but I just wanted to get this conversation out of the way. Number to call 0809 191 3913, 0809 222, 0913, 0809 234 5913, landlines 01236 7913, 01282 Remember that, because of time, 1 minute. Adam quickly on Twitter. Oladekon Isaac says, what is the Twitter handle of your guest? What's your Twitter handle?
At Moghalu Kingsley.
You know what? I will tweet it. And then Nigerian flight Anthony Patrick says, hello Faith, your guest is on point. I also believe in mixing the petri dish until we get the right mix of leaders. Technocrats that will do the job for us. Solomon Adeboshin says, well, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. These people don't chop us clean mouths. 2019 is the date. Mubarak Oladipo says, Farik, I understand what the Prof is saying about fuel prices, but communicating that to the understanding of the average Nigerian is going to be a big deal. The only translation to allow market forces play out would be that government has increased oil price, period. And that is the truth, though. Lagos Kings.
Hello?
Hello, good morning. What's your name?
Good morning. My name is Emeka.
Emeka, you have what minutes? Go.
Yeah, nice one, please. On the issue about the COAS not being able to stand on, elections and politics in Nigeria is very expensive. And it will really take people with stolen money to fund these things.
Okay.
So until that point, that area is changed, the monetization of elections is sort of reduced, or we find a better way of advocacy to reach out to people to reduce that drive for money in politics. I don't think it will be easy for any new political party to face these two mega
parties. All right, then. Thank you, Emeka.
I'm sorry to use that word.
Thank you. Okay.
Well, let me answer that. First of all, in terms of the new political parties facing the mega political parties. Now,
having the finances.
Yes, having the finances. First of all, they could actually come together to coalesce their support behind, for example, a common presidential candidate or a common gubernatorial candidate, especially at this time when they're still very young and small. Yeah, that's one way to pull their forces together. Now, the question of money, the Nigerian masses can actually fund their emancipation from the vice grip of this political cabal that is ruling us. Let me tell you how. If we are 180 million people, if people put up their 100 naira, 1,000 naira to support candidates in a massive way, whereby each person is not so, you don't become broke by supporting, but because so many people have done it, so much money can be raised to help them.
So is it also
Yeah.
this political parties are saying coming together? Can they also do like a crowdfunding?
That's what I'm trying to
be able
say.
to get people
That's
to-
what I'm trying to say.
to
Yeah,
get
you can
behind them.
crowdfund to support candidates. And this is one way. You may not raise enough money as the big cabals, but you raise enough money to do the legitimate things that a political campaign should do, and which will still cost money in any event.
Lagos Stokes.
Good morning, Faith. This is Lisa.
Lisa, yes, you have 1 minute. Go.
Yes, I'm back with the beat. This is where I'm best at. Now, your guest has been very clear with the truth. Yes, the usual expression of alleged can't be used when he is concerned. Now, in 2015, when this present government came in, they had massive goodwill.
Yes.
So much so that they were able to say that they are removing subsidy, telling us, and took it to 145. If they had gone a step further by saying we are totally removing subsidy and letting the forces of demand and supply
Play out.
determine the price of petrol, not diesel, because diesel has been deregulated.
Yes.
I think at that time we
Yes.
would have
Exactly.
had that
Exactly.
compunction to say we just go ahead, everything is fine. It took 2 years, and when they got into the system, they were making mistakes, trying to cover up for their mistakes, and later found out that in government, what you think you see, what you can do is not exactly what it is.
What it is you can
And
do. Thank you,
your guest has
Lisa.
exactly giving you how it is in government to the cronies, political, what they call it, political contractors. You have to settle these people,
All
and
right.
you cannot make any headway.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay.
This
Let
is
me
time.
let me address that matter and why this is the case.
Let me quickly take one last
Okay.
call, then can I address that and we'll wrap
Okay,
up.
all
Lagos
right.
Stokes.
Hello.
Good morning.
Yeah, good, thank you. You see, everything your guest is saying.
Robinson, yes?
Beautiful. Yes,
Okay.
Robin. They are beautiful because number one, when you look at politics in this country, three systems: the role of money, ethnicity, and religion. You have to address that, and it has to do with the structure of this country. As for the power sector, for me, it is going to work. It's not about the investors coming not knowing what to do. Let the government hands off totally, and you will see that sector moving forward. The government is the one giving them the advertising at the same time, holding on to 40% of the investment. How do you expect them to work?
All right then. Thank you, Robinson.
Okay, now let me first of all address the first question about lack of political will to use the honeymoon period
Yes.
to take difficult decisions. That's what I'm trying to tell you, that in Nigeria we have politicians, but we don't have leaders. Because leadership is about taking people from where they are to where they need to be. Sometimes they may not even like it. It's not always a
So making
popularity
hard
contest.
decisions.
Yeah, the political will to make hard decisions and to explain those decisions and to say to people, stay with me. The results will justify this decision. So that involves a certain amount of taking risks on behalf of the society. But because we have politicians who do not understand what leadership means, their focus is just on being popular to win the next election. But they are not transforming the society. So therefore, they don't have the fundamental leadership capability. Now, to the other question about government hands off or hands
Yes.
enough, let's
Hands-
just say.
yeah, of the power sector.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with the caller. I think the government in this country is a very big part of the problem. They're not really, they think they can hold on to things, but they don't have the capacity to manage what they're trying to hold on to. And in the process, the citizen is worse off. If you cannot run the thing yourself, let those who can run it, and create a market for competition. And that market force will bring down the prices, because that's what worries the government sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming. I mean, 1 hour seemed not to be interesting enough for this conversation. I mean, we could go on and on. There's so many other places that we could have touched, but we do not have enough time for that. But thank you so much. Phone lines are going off. We can't take.
Well,
I should have
thank
opened
you.
the phone lines earlier, but
Well, thank you very
we have to
much.
get this conversation going first.
Yes, that's right.
So my guest for today has been, Kingsley Chiedu Moghalu, who is a political economist, lawyer, and former United Nations official, but he was also the deputy governor for the CBN between 2009 to 2014. He actually runs his own institute now for governance and economic transformation, focused on the achievement of inclusive economic growth and effective public policy in developing countries. Of course, that is just to break it down, to educate people about what they need to look out for where governance and leadership is concerned. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you very much.
And like I said, I will put up a Twitter handle so you can go follow him and engage him more. And then maybe I would upload, this, because I try to get it all on video so that
then Facebook
I can
as
put
well.
it out, and then you can catch it, there. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very
again.
much. You're welcome.
Thank
I'm
you
glad
so
to
much
be
for
here.
joining me on the conversation today. Stay tuned. Signals is up next at 10 a.m. My name is Faith. You're listening to the Saturday Breakfast Show on Lagos Talks 91.3.
Lagos has many voices, and everyone wants to connect. But there's only one station that lets you join the conversation. Lagos Talks 91.3. Let's get talking.